What is hell? For a moment, close your eyes and truly contemplate the word. Let it settle in the architecture of your mind. What images does it conjure? For most of us, it is a collage of inherited fears, a gallery of horrors painted by millennia of human culture. We see raging, unquenchable fires. We imagine an abyss of absolute darkness, a void so profound it extinguishes not just light, but hope itself. We hear the echoes of tormented souls, a symphony of eternal suffering. We feel a crushing pressure, an atmosphere thick with despair and sulfur. It is the ultimate destination of the damned, the final repository for all that is evil, a place meticulously designed for eternal punishment. This concept, in one form or another, is one of humanity's most ancient and persistent ideas. The ancient Hebrews spoke of Sheol, a shadowy realm of the dead. The Greeks whispered of Hades and the torment of Tartarus, a pit of punishment buried deep beneath the earth. The Norse sagas warned of Helheim, a frozen, desolate world of the dishonorable dead. In the East, Buddhist and Hindu traditions mapped out the intricate, terrifying realms of Naraka, each with its own specific form of suffering. From the volcanic pits of the Abrahamic faiths to the icy wastelands of Norse mythology, the idea of a physical place of ultimate suffering is woven so deeply into our collective psyche that it feels almost instinctual, an archetypal shadow that has followed our species since we first looked at the darkness beyond the campfire and wondered what terrors it held. For centuries, we, in our modern sophistication, have filed these concepts away. We labeled them as powerful allegories, as metaphors for the human condition, as primitive attempts by our ancestors to enforce moral codes and explain the unexplainable. Hell, we concluded, was a state of mind, a psychological construct, or a theological threat, but certainly not a physical, geographic location. It was a story we told ourselves, a powerful and terrifying fiction. The cosmology of our ancestors was simple, a flat or spherical earth at the center of everything, with the heavens the domain of gods and angels stretched out above, and the underworld, the realm of demons and the damned, lurking somewhere deep below our feet. It was a tidy, three-tiered universe. But then, science illuminated our world. Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, and Newton dismantled this ancient architecture. They showed us that the Earth was not the center of everything. It was a planet, a wanderer, orbiting a star in a vast, sprawling cosmos. The heavens were not a celestial ceiling, but an infinite expanse of space, stars, and galaxies. And the underworld? Well, the underworld simply vanished from the map. Geology and physics showed us that below our feet lay rock, mantle, and a core of molten iron hot, yes, but not a domain of conscious evil. And so, hell was officially relegated to the realm of pure belief, a powerful idea with no physical address in our new scientific universe. But what if that dismissal was premature? What if our ancestors were not as naive as we believe? We have spent the last few centuries mapping our own world, exploring its deepest oceans and highest mountains, assuring ourselves that there are no gateways to a subterranean abyss. We have looked inward, into the atom, and outward, to the planets of our own solar system. And in all this searching, we have found no evidence of a mythological hell. This has given us a sense of security, a confidence that such places are confined to the pages of Dante and Milton. Yet, we have been looking in the wrong place. We have been searching under our feet when we should have been looking up, far beyond our own sky. The greatest revolution in human understanding since Copernicus is happening right now, quietly, every single night, in the unblinking eyes of our most powerful telescopes. We have discovered that the universe is not empty. It is, in fact, teeming with worlds, thousands upon thousands of them. They are called exoplanets, worlds orbiting other stars. For the entirety of human history, we knew of only a handful of planets, the wanderers in our own celestial backyard. Today, that number has exploded into a library of cosmic possibilities, a catalog of worlds so vast and diverse it beggars belief. And here is where our investigation truly begins. This is the moment the old myths are taken out of the dusty archives and placed under the harsh analytical light of modern astrophysics. What is the significance of discovering thousands of new worlds? It means that for the first time in our history, we can cross-reference our most ancient nightmares with a catalog of physical, existing places. We are no longer limited to asking, what if a world like hell existed? We can now ask a far more direct and unsettling question. Among the billions of planets in our galaxy, has science already found one? We can translate the allegories of our ancestors into the language of astronomy. What is eternal fire? Perhaps it is a planet orbiting so perilously close to its star that its surface is a permanent, global ocean of molten rock, a world where the very ground is a sea of lava. What is the outer darkness? It could be a rogue planet, a world ejected from its solar system to wander alone in the freezing, absolute blackness of interstellar space, a place where the concept of a day does not exist. What about the more specific Baroque tortures described in ancient texts, atmospheres of poison, rains of fire, winds that can flay skin from bone? Could such things exist in reality? The chilling answer is yes. We are discovering worlds with atmospheric temperatures hot enough to vaporize iron, worlds where it rains not water, but molten glass, sideways, driven by supersonic winds. Worlds with atmospheres so thick with sulfuric acid and carbon dioxide that they would crush and dissolve a human body instantly. The fictions of our ancestors, it turns out, are proving to be the facts of our modern astronomy. The universe is far more creative and far more terrifying than our mythologies ever dared to imagine. In this investigation, we will not be dealing in metaphor or theology. We will be dealing in data, in telemetry, in the cold, hard evidence gathered by space, telescopes that have peered into the darkness and found places that perfectly match our most primal definitions of damnation. We will journey to 3 specific worlds, each one a confirmed, catalogued planet discovered by our own science. These are not speculative fantasies. They are real destinations. We will explore a planet of eternal fire, whose surface makes a volcano seem like a cool spring day. We will then travel to a world of absolute darkness and unimaginable cold, a true cosmic ghost. And finally, we will visit a place that embodies a more specific, more visceral horror, a nightmare world of blue glass and supersonic winds. We will lay the ancient descriptions of hell from multiple cultures alongside the scientific data from these 3 planets. The parallels, as you will see, are not just uncanny, they are precise. The question is no longer if a world that matches the description of hell exists. The scientific community, whether it intended to or not, has already answered that question for us. The real, far more disturbing question we must now confront is this: how did our ancestors, thousands of years before the invention of the telescope, describe these specific cosmic realities with such haunting and terrifying accuracy? Were their visions of hell truly just products of the human imagination? Or were they something else entirely? A memory? A warning? A description of a real place, passed down through the generations, its origins lost to time, surviving only as the ghost story we call mythology? Prepare yourself. We are about to open the celestial case file on hell. Before we journey to the stars, we must first journey into ourselves. We must travel back in time, not with a starship, but with a question: where did the idea of hell come from? The easy answer, the one we have told ourselves for generations, is that it was born from our most basic terrestrial fears. And this is true, but it is only the beginning of the story. The human mind is a powerful engine of association, and its first and most profound relationship was with the earth itself. The ground beneath our feet was a source of immense duality, a paradox that shaped our earliest spirituality. The earth was the great mother, the source of all life. From its soil sprang the grains we harvested, the trees that gave us shelter, and the grasses that fed our livestock. It was a womb of creation, but it was also a tomb. When our loved ones died, we returned their bodies to the earth. We watched as the soil consumed the flesh, a slow, inexorable process of decay and disappearance. This single, powerful observation that the earth both gives life and consumes the dead is the psychological seed from which the concept of an underworld first grew. It was the first logical deduction. If the body goes down into the earth, then perhaps the spirit, the soul, the consciousness, goes with it. The world beneath our feet became the first and most obvious destination for the afterlife. This wasn't a place of punishment, not at first. In many early cultures, the underworld was simply the land of the dead, a gray, shadowy, and diminished reflection of the world of the living, a place of eternal stillness and memory. But human nature requires justice, or at least a sense of order. The idea that a righteous king and a wicked murderer would share the same fate in a gray, neutral afterlife felt fundamentally unbalanced. And so, the underworld began to develop a moral geography. It was divided into provinces, realms, and territories. There were pleasant, peaceful fields for the virtuous, and then, inevitably, there had to be a place for the wicked, a pit, a prison, a place of active, eternal torment. And as our human capacity for cruelty grew in the world above, so too did our imagination for the punishments that awaited in the world below. This is the critical juncture where our investigation begins, the moment humanity began to meticulously design its nightmares, codifying them into religious doctrine and cultural myth. It is in the details of these designs that we will find our first set of celestial clues. Let us begin with the civilization that arguably gave the West its most enduring blueprint for the afterlife, the ancient Greeks. Their underworld, Hades, was a complex and richly detailed place. It was not a singular concept, but a vast kingdom with its own rivers, guardians, and distinct regions. To enter, a soul had to cross the river Styx, the river of hate, paying the skeletal ferryman caring for passage. At the gates stood Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed hound who prevented the dead from ever leaving. This was a realm of profound gloom, a world without sunlight, shrouded in a perpetual murky twilight. But for the truly wicked, those who had committed unforgivable sins against the gods or humanity, a deeper, darker destination awaited, Tartarus. In the poet Hesiod's telling, Tartarus was as far beneath Hades as Hades was beneath the earth. A bronze anvil, he wrote, dropped from the surface of the earth, would fall for 9 days and 9 nights to reach Hades, and another 9 days and nights to finally reach the floor of Tartarus. It was a bottomless pit, a cosmic prison, and its descriptions are our first piece of evidence. Tartarus was surrounded by a great bronze wall and the river Phlegethon, a river of pure, flowing fire. The punishments within were not just about pain, but about eternal, physical futility in a hostile environment. Sisyphus was condemned to forever roll a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down each time he neared the top, a sentence of endless labor on a surface with impossibly cruel physics. Tantalus was made to stand in a pool of water beneath a fruit tree, but whenever he bent to drink, the water would recede, and whenever he reached for the fruit, the branches would pull away, a sentence of eternal, agonizing dehydration and starvation in a world that teases with salvation. The key elements here are not just allegorical, they are environmental. We have a realm of profound darkness, a place of crushing depth, and a landscape dominated by a river of actual liquid fire. Now let us travel from Greece to the ancient Near East, to the historical and spiritual soil that gave rise to the Abrahamic faiths of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Here, the concept of hell finds one of its most vivid and influential expressions, and it begins not as a myth, but as a real physical place. Just outside the ancient city of Jerusalem lies the Valley of Hinnom, in Hebrew, Gehinnom. This is the origin of the word Gehenna, one of the primary terms for hell in the New Testament. In the time of the kings of Judah, this valley was associated with horrific acts, including child sacrifice to the god Moloch, where children were passed through fire. By the 1st century, The valley had been converted into something more mundane, yet visually potent. It was the city's garbage dump. It was a place where all the refuse of Jerusalem, including the carcasses of animals and the unburied bodies of executed criminals, was thrown. To consume the waste and purify the air, the fires in this valley were kept burning constantly. Day and night, the valley of Hinnom smoldered. Smoke and flames were a perpetual feature of its landscape. It was a place of filth, fire, and death. And it is this very real, very observable, terrestrial horror that became the literal template for the theological concept of hell. Jesus himself used the imagery of Gehenna to describe the destination of the wicked. He spoke of a place of unquenchable fire, where the worm does not die. The book of Revelation expands upon this with terrifying grandeur, describing a lake of fire and brimstone, or sulfur. The defining features of this vision of hell are explicit: all-consuming fire, a choking atmosphere of smoke and sulfur, and the presence of decay and death. And like Tartarus, it is described as an abyss, a bottomless pit, a place from which there is no escape. What is so startling as we survey these ancient concepts is their consistency. Let us step back and look at the pattern. Across cultures separated by vast distances of geography and time, the descriptions of a place of eternal punishment converge on a remarkably similar set of environmental characteristics. They are almost always subterranean, deep within the earth, emphasizing a sense of crushing pressure and claustrophobia. They are almost always characterized by one of two temperature extremes: either unbearable, all-consuming fire, like the Greek phlegathon and the Abrahamic Gehenna, or, in other traditions like the Norse Helheim, they are realms of unbearable, life-extinguishing cold and ice. And they are almost always places of darkness, either the murky gloom of Hades or the outer darkness, spoken of in the Bible, a void completely devoid of light. Fire, darkness, toxic atmospheres, and extreme temperatures. For our ancestors, this combination of horrors was the most extreme environment they could possibly imagine. It was a work of pure fantasy, designed to be as alien and inhospitable to life as possible. They were describing a world that could not possibly exist. And yet, it is precisely this combination of characteristics, worlds of molten lava, worlds of frozen darkness, worlds with skies of sulfur and glass, that our telescopes are now discovering, scattered like cosmic warnings throughout the galaxy. The human mind painted a portrait of hell based on its most primal fears. It used the materials it had at hand: the fire of a volcano, the darkness of a cave, the decay of the flesh, the suffocating smoke of a garbage dump, and it amplified them to an infinite, eternal degree. For centuries, that is all it was: a portrait, a metaphor. But the universe, it seems, has a far more literal imagination than we do. The question our investigation must now confront is this: is it merely a coincidence that the most extreme environments imagined by the human psyche are now being found to be common realities in the cosmos? Is it just a fluke that the unquenchable fires and outer darkness of scripture and myth serve as perfectly accurate scientific descriptions for the atmospheric and geological conditions of newly discovered planets? We have established the terrestrial context. We have seen the blueprint of hell as drawn by our ancestors. Now we must turn our gaze upward. It is time to see the reality. For thousands of years, the act of looking at the night sky was an act of imagination, of connecting faint dots of light to create heroes, monsters, and gods. The stars were a canvas onto which we projected our hopes and fears. But in the late 20th century, that relationship fundamentally changed. We developed a new way of seeing, a method so sensitive it could detect not just the stars themselves, but the invisible worlds orbiting them. This is the science of exoplanet detection, and it is the single most important tool in our investigation. We are, in essence, cosmic detectives, searching for clues in the faintest streams of ancient starlight. One of our primary methods is called the transit method. Imagine you are standing miles away from a powerful lighthouse at night. You cannot see the details of the lighthouse, only its brilliant, steady beam. But then, a tiny moth flies between you and the light. For a fraction of a second, the light dims, just barely. If you are watching closely enough, you will see it. By measuring the timing and the depth of that dimming, you could deduce the size of the moth and how fast it was flying. This is precisely what our telescopes, like the Kepler Space Telescope, do. They stare, unblinking, at hundreds of thousands of stars, waiting for the telltale dimming caused by a planet passing in front of its stellar host. It is a science of shadows, of finding worlds by the void they leave behind. The other key technique is the radial velocity method. This time, imagine not watching the lighthouse, but listening to it, if it had a constant siren. As an ambulance passes you, its siren's pitch changes higher as it approaches, lower as it moves away. This is the Doppler effect. Planets, even small ones, exert a gravitational pull on their parent stars, causing the star to wobble ever so slightly. As the star wobbles towards us and away from us, the frequency of its light shifts, just like the siren's pitch. We cannot see the planet, but we can detect its gravitational fingerprint in the rhythm of its star. It's the astronomical equivalent of seeing a large, invisible dog tugging on a leash held by its owner. You don't see the dog, but you see the owner being pulled back and forth, and from that, you can know the dog is there. Why is this important? Because it establishes that what we are about to explore is not speculation. It is the result of meticulous, painstaking observation and data analysis. We are not guessing that these worlds exist. We are reading the evidence they have imprinted on the starlight that has traveled for decades, centuries, or even millennia to reach us. With this established, let us journey to our first destination, our first celestial clue in the case file on Hell. Let us travel 41 light-years from Earth to the constellation of Cancer. There, orbiting a sun-like star named Copernicus, we find a planet designated 55 Cancri E. On paper, it sounds almost promising. It is a super-Earth, a rocky planet about twice the diameter of our own world. But any hope of similarity ends there. In Phase 1, we explored the ancient Greek concept of phlegathon, the river of fire, and the Abrahamic lake of fire, the ultimate symbol of divine punishment. For millennia, this was a hyperbolic, fantastical image, a metaphor for the most extreme torment imaginable. With 55 Cancri E, we have found that the universe's reality is more extreme than our mythology ever dared to be. This planet does not have a lake of fire. The planet is the lake of fire. 55 Cancri orbits its star at a staggering proximity, far closer than Mercury's to our Sun. Its entire year, the time it takes to complete one full orbit, is only 18 hours. The gravitational pull at this distance is so immense that the planet has become tidally locked. Just as our moon always shows the same face to the Earth, 55 Cancri E is condemned to forever show the same face to its star. This has created a world of two permanent, nightmarish hemispheres. One side of the planet is trapped in eternal, searing daylight. The other is locked in an endless, starless night. Let us venture onto the day side. Here, the surface temperature is estimated to reach 2,400 degrees Celsius, or 4,400 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a heat so intense, it is difficult for the human mind to even process. It is well above the melting point of every known rock and mineral. The entire sun-facing side of this planet, a whole hemisphere larger than Earth's, is a single permanent, bubbling ocean of molten lava. The ground is a sea of liquid rock. The sky, if you could call it that, is likely a thick, crushing, toxic atmosphere, stripped away by the stellar winds, and then immediately replenished by the outgassing of the molten planet below. Any elements like silicon, iron, or titanium would exist as a vapor, creating a sky of metal gas. Now, imagine the night side, locked in perpetual darkness. Here, temperatures cool to a still incinerating 1,100 degrees Celsius. In this relative cool, it is theorized that the molten rock might briefly harden, forming a thin, temporary crust of obsidian-like rock, only to be shattered and submerged again by the ferocious lava tides that sweep across the planet. This isn't just a world of fire. It is a dynamic system of fire, a planet of liquid rock and metal skies, a perfect physical realization of the ancient visions of Gehenna and Tartarus. But the ancient underworlds were not just defined by fire. They were equally defined by their opposing horror, darkness. Hades was a kingdom of perpetual gloom. The Bible speaks of an outer darkness, a place of exile from light and life. For our ancestors, darkness was simply the absence of the sun, a state of being cold and lost. But the cosmos has, once again, presented us with a reality far more terrifying than our ancestors' simple duality of light and heat, dark and cold. Let us travel 750 light-years away to a planet called TRE-S2b in the constellation of Draco, the dragon. This world is the physical embodiment of outer darkness. It holds the distinction of being the darkest exoplanet ever discovered. It is a gas giant about the size of Jupiter, but its properties are unlike anything in our solar system. Your mind may conjure an image of a dark planet as a cold, icy world, far from its star, like Neptune, or a wandering rogue planet. But TRE-S2b is the opposite. It orbits its star at a distance of only 3 million miles, making it scorchingly hot, with an atmospheric temperature of over 980 degrees Celsius or 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Herein lies the terrifying paradox of TRE-S2b. It is a world of extreme heat, yet it is pitch black. Why? Because its atmosphere is filled with unknown, light-absorbing chemicals. It is a cosmic sponge for light. For context, the dark asphalt of a new road reflects about 4% of the sunlight that hits it. Our own moon reflects about 12%. TRE-S2b reflects less than 1% of the starlight it receives. It is, quite literally, darker than black acrylic paint or a lump of coal. It is a colossal sphere of utter blackness, absorbing almost every photon of light that falls upon it. Yet, because it is so incredibly hot, the planet itself glows. It does not reflect light, it emits its own. The laws of physics dictate that an object this hot must radiate energy, and it does so with a faint, deep, menacing red glow. The image this data paints is of something straight from a medieval text on demonology. It is a giant, black sphere, hotter than an oven, hanging in space, absorbing all light and glowing from within with a phantom, crimson light. It is a smoldering ember the size of Jupiter, a world of black fire. This is not the cold, empty darkness our ancestors knew. This is a hot, suffocating, predatory darkness. It is a world that perfectly unites the two great fears of the ancient underworlds, the fire of the furnace and the light-swallowing void of the abyss, all in one physical object. We have found the fire. We have found the darkness. The two foundational pillars of mythological hell are not myths. They are real physical places. Our journey so far has taken us to the two great pillars of the mythological underworld, a world of eternal, molten fire and a world of eternal, consuming darkness. These are the archetypes, the broad, terrifying brushstrokes that define the landscape of hell across dozens of cultures. For many, the parallels we have already drawn might be dismissed as coincidence, as the universe simply having a larger and more horrifying imagination than our ancestors did. It is a logical, safe conclusion. It is also, perhaps, an incorrect one, because the ancient descriptions of torment were not always so broad. They were often filled with baroque, specific, and deeply strange details that seemed to defy simple archetypal explanation. They spoke not just of fire, but of unique and particular agonies. This is where our investigation must now go, to a clue so specific, so bizarre, that it challenges the very notion of coincidence. To find it, we must travel 63 light-years from Earth to the tiny constellation of Vulpecula, the Fox. Here, orbiting a star slightly smaller and cooler than our Sun, we find a planet designated HD 189733b. From a great distance, this world is a thing of profound beauty. Our telescopes have managed to determine its color, and the result is breathtaking. It is a deep, rich, azure blue, a marble of cobalt and sapphire hanging in the void, strikingly reminiscent of our own pale blue dot. It is an image that speaks of water, of oceans, of life. It is a color that could lull you into a sense of peace, a feeling of familiarity in the vast, cold emptiness of space. But this beauty is the most profound and terrifying deception in the known cosmos. The tranquil blue of HD 189733b is not the blue of life-giving oceans. It is the color of a nightmare, the hue of a very specific and very physical form of hell. This is not a world of water. The blue of this planet is the color of death. The science behind this beautiful lie is what elevates this planet from a mere curiosity to the centerpiece of our investigation. HD 189733b is another hot Jupiter, a gas giant orbiting perilously close to its star, resulting in searing atmospheric temperatures of over 1,000 degrees Celsius, or 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Its deep blue color, astronomers have concluded, is not from the reflection of an ocean, but is the result of a hazy, high-altitude atmosphere filled with silicate particles. Silicate is the molecule that makes up sand, and more importantly, glass. At the extreme temperatures of this world's atmosphere, these silicate particles would not be solid grains of sand. They would be droplets of molten liquid glass. So, the atmosphere itself is laced with the raw material for a storm of epic proportions. But it is the third and final piece of data that transforms this world into a place of truly unimaginable horror. By observing the planet's atmosphere, astronomers have been able to measure the speed of its winds. The number they arrived at is difficult to comprehend. The winds on HD 189733b blow at over 8,700 kilometers per hour, or 5,400 miles per hour. That is 7 times the speed of sound. Let us pause and assemble these 3 facts. We have a planet with an atmosphere full of molten glass particles. We have temperatures hot enough to keep that glass in a liquid state. And we have winds moving faster than a speeding bullet. What happens when you combine these 3 ingredients? The conclusion is as simple as it is horrifying. On planet HD 189733b, it rains glass. Sideways. This is not a gentle terrestrial rain shower. This is a perpetual, global, supersonic storm of tiny, molten glass shards. It is a wind of flying razors, a horizontal blizzard of shrapnel that would scour, shred, and vaporize any known material, let alone the fragile flesh of a human being. While the concepts of a fiery hell or a dark abyss are primal fears, a world of supersonic, horizontal glass rain is a torment of such bizarre specificity that it seems to leap from the pages of a particularly inventive horror writer. And yet, it is real. The laws of physics have conspired to create a world that is a literal, perpetual torture chamber. Now, let us step back and become the detective. Let us lay our 3 celestial clues upon the table. First, 55 Concrete E, the tidally locked super-Earth. One hemisphere, a permanent ocean of molten lava. The other, a prison of darkness. It is the lake of fire from the Book of Revelation. It is the river Phlegethon from the Greek underworld. It is the unquenchable furnace of Gehenna, realized on a planetary scale. Second, TRE S2b, the planet of hot darkness. A colossal world, blacker than coal, that absorbs the light of its own sun, yet glows with a faint, internal, malevolent red. It is the outer darkness, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. It is the profound, starless gloom of Hades and Sheol, given terrifying physical form. And finally, our third exhibit, HD 189733b, the azure world whose beauty is a mask for a hell of supersonic winds and a perpetual storm of flying, molten glass, the physical manifestation of a specific, excruciating, and endless torture. the fire, the darkness, the unspeakable torment. Taken together, these three worlds, these three confirmed astronomical discoveries, do not merely echo the concepts of hell found in our ancient myths. They form a perfect triptych, a complete environmental profile that matches the descriptions codified by our ancestors with chilling precision. This is the eureka moment of our investigation. This is the point where the explanation of coincidence begins to feel insufficient, an intellectual comfort blanket we use to shield ourselves from a more profound and disturbing possibility. The sheer statistical improbability of such a perfect match between ancient, pre-scientific fantasy and modern astrophysical reality forces us to ask the one question that has been looming over this entire investigation. How? How could they possibly have known? Could the human imagination, completely unaided by technology, independently invent a tidally locked lava world, a light-absorbing gas giant, and a planet of supersonic glass rain? The specificity of the correlation, especially with the glass storms of HD 189733b, strains the bounds of random chance to the absolute breaking point. This leads us inexorably to a radical and deeply unsettling thesis. What if the ancient myths of hell are not myths at all? What if they are not metaphors for our inner demons or allegorical tools for controlling the populace? What if their origins are not theological, but historical? What if the descriptions of hell that have haunted humanity for millennia are, in fact, a corrupted, fragmented, and degraded record of real astronomical knowledge? An ancestral memory of real places in the cosmos, passed down through countless generations until its scientific origins were forgotten, leaving only the terror behind. This thesis does not require us to believe in demons or divine revelation. It requires us to consider something almost more incredible, that somewhere in our deep, unwritten past, a human civilization possessed a knowledge of the cosmos that we are only now beginning to rediscover. That this knowledge was lost in some great cataclysm, shattered into a million cultural fragments, and the pieces were then painstakingly reassembled by priests, poets, and prophets, not as science, but as religion. The planets themselves were forgotten, but their horrifying environments were remembered, repurposed as the geography of the afterlife. In this light, the visions of hell are not a glimpse into a supernatural dimension. They are a fossil record of a lost science, an echo of a forgotten chapter in the human story. They are not a warning about where we might go when we die, but a testament to a knowledge of the stars that our species once had and then tragically lost. We stand at a precipice of understanding. Our investigation has led us to a staggering conclusion. The ancient, fiery pits of our mythological hells are not fantasies. They are echoes. The unquenchable fires of Tartarus are reflected in the global lava ocean of 55 Cancri E. The eternal, outer darkness of Gehenna is mirrored in the light-swallowing atmosphere of TRES-2b. The bizarre, specific torments of 1,000 forgotten underworlds find their physical expression in the supersonic glass storms of HD 189733b. We have advanced the thesis that these are not coincidences, but the fragmented, mythologized remnants of a lost astronomical knowledge. If we accept this thesis, even as a possibility, we must confront its earth-shattering implications. This knowledge, even in its corrupted form, would have been the single most powerful force in the ancient world. It changes our understanding of history itself. Consider the birth of organized religion and the rise of the priestly class. In a world without this knowledge, a priest is a spiritual guide, an interpreter of sacred texts, a leader of ritual. Their power is based on faith and tradition. But in a world where the leadership possesses the knowledge, or even the belief that hell is a real, physical destination, the role of the priest is transformed. They are no longer just spiritual guides. They are cosmological gatekeepers. They are the sole possessors of the map to the afterlife, the only ones who understand the true nature of the cosmic dangers that await every single human soul. This is a power beyond anything a king or an emperor could wield. A king can threaten your mortal life, but a priest armed with the knowledge of a literal hell can hold dominion over your eternal soul. The threat is no longer a metaphor for divine disapproval. It is a statement of astronomical fact. Follow the code, obey the rituals, support the temple is no longer just a moral instruction. It becomes a vital, practical piece of survival advice. No different than do not eat the poison berries or do not walk off the cliff. The tithes, the sacrifices, the unwavering obedience, they all become the price for the key, a secret knowledge of how to navigate the treacherous path after death and avoid falling into a world of molten lava or glass storms. The great temples of the ancient world, in this light, become more than places of worship. They become centers of cosmological defense, institutions built to protect humanity from a terror they knew was not imaginary. This terrifying knowledge would not have remained confined to the temples. It would have inevitably become the ultimate tool of statecraft, the bedrock upon which empires were built and maintained. How do you unify disparate tribes into a cohesive kingdom? How do you justify the absolute power of a pharaoh or an emperor? You anchor their authority not in the soil, but in the stars. You declare that the ruler is not merely a man, but a divinely appointed agent, the only one with the celestial favor required to guide his people through the cosmic labyrinth. Look at ancient Egypt, a civilization whose obsession with the afterlife is unparalleled in human history. The entire society was a complex machine geared towards one goal, ensuring a successful journey through the Duat, their underworld. The Duat was a place of immense peril, filled with gates guarded by demons, lakes of fire, and the threat of the second death, absolute oblivion. The Book of the Dead, their most famous funerary text, is not a book of prayers, but a book of cheat code spells and incantations to overcome the specific horrors of the underworld. Now, let us apply our thesis. What if the pharaoh and the powerful priesthood of Amun-Ra were the inheritors of this fragmented astronomical data? What if they knew or believed that the lake of fire was not a fantasy, but a real type of world that existed in the cosmos? Suddenly, the entire structure of their society snaps into focus with a new, chilling clarity. The pharaoh's divine right to rule becomes an absolute necessity. The immense wealth funneled into the construction of pyramids and tombs is no longer an act of hubris, but a desperate, national-level project of cosmic survival. The pyramids, perfectly aligned with the stars, cease to be just tombs. They become astronomical instruments, escape hatches, machines designed to launch the soul of the pharaoh away from the terrestrial realm and its terrifying celestial counterparts, ensuring he could bypass the horrors of the Duat. The power of the Egyptian state for 3,000 years was built upon a foundation of cosmic fear, a fear of underworlds whose descriptions perfectly match the worlds our own telescopes are now finding. This pattern repeats. Consider the spread of the Abrahamic faiths, particularly Christianity, within the Remang Empire. In a world of chaos and uncertainty, a belief system that not only identified the ultimate cosmic danger, an eternal hell of fire and darkness, but also offered a single, definitive path to salvation, held an irresistible power. The message was simple and absolute. The universe is a terrifying place, filled with real destinations of torment, but here is the one true path to avoid them. This wasn't just about offering spiritual comfort. It was about offering a solution to the most terrifying problem imaginable. The knowledge of these hell worlds, filtered through the lens of theology, became a powerful engine for conversion, binding together millions of people with a shared understanding of the cosmic stakes. It gave them certainty in the face of the ultimate fear, a fear that, our thesis suggests, was rooted in a memory of a real astronomical truth. So what happened to the original science? Where are the star charts of these hell worlds, the astronomical texts of this forgotten civilization? The tragedy is that knowledge is fragile. It can be lost. In the great burnings of libraries, like that of Alexandria, in the societal collapses of ages like the Bronze Age collapse, in the slow, inevitable degradation of information passed down through oral tradition over thousands of years, The precise data was eroded away. The orbital mechanics, the stellar classifications, the planetary science, it all turned to dust. But the emotional core of the knowledge, the raw, undiluted horror of these worlds, was too powerful to forget. This terror survived. It became a cultural fossil, an echo of a lost science. And this is the ultimate legacy, the concept of hell, which has shaped law, inspired art, and driven the engines of history for millennia, may not be a product of the human imagination at all. It is the ghost of a forgotten truth. It is the inheritance of a terror our ancestors felt when they looked at the sky and saw not gods and monsters, but real worlds of fire, darkness, and glass. We, in the 21st century, look at the data from our space telescopes, and we feel a sense of scientific wonder. Our ancestors may have possessed a version of this same data, and it filled them with a fear so profound it reshaped the course of human civilization. We have inherited not their knowledge, but their fear. It is a fear that lives in our language, in our art, and in the deepest archetypes of our collective unconscious. A fear of a place that, until now, we believed was only a myth. We began this journey with a question that felt, at once, both simple and profound. What if hell is a real place? For centuries, this question belonged to the theologian and the philosopher. The modern world, confident in its scientific understanding, had dismissed the fiery pits and shadowy abysses of our ancestors as powerful metaphors, as products of a pre-scientific imagination, grappling with the universal fears of death, pain, and the unknown. We believed we had outgrown such myths. Our investigation was designed to challenge that certainty, to reopen a case file that had long been considered closed. We proposed to treat these ancient myths not as fantasies, but as a set of clues, a psychological and historical blueprint of a destination we could perhaps find. Our first step took us not to the stars, but into the deep past of the human psyche. We examined the terrestrial context, exploring the Greco-Roman Tartarus, the Abrahamic Gehenna, and the common threads of terror that bound them together. We discovered a startlingly consistent portrait of the underworld, painted across civilizations separated by time and geography. The core ingredients were always the same: a realm of eternal, unquenchable fire, a place of profound, inescapable darkness, and often unique and specific torments designed to inflict an eternity of suffering. This was the human half of the equation, the description of the nightmare we were searching for. Then, armed with this blueprint, we turned our gaze from the earth to the heavens. We journeyed through the cold, hard data of modern astronomy, and the cosmos answered with a chilling affirmation. We traveled to 55 Cantry E, and in its permanent, global ocean of molten lava, we found the literal embodiment of the Lake of Fire. We journeyed to TRES-2b, and in its light-swallowing atmosphere and faint, menacing crimson glow, we found the outer darkness made manifest. We completed our triptych with HD 189,733b, and in its supersonic winds and horizontal rain of molten glass, we found a torment so specific and so bizarre, it felt less like an archetype and more like a distorted eyewitness account. The celestial evidence did not just rhyme with the mythological descriptions. It was a perfect, terrifying match. This led us to the core thesis of our investigation, that this astonishing correlation was not the result of mere coincidence. It was, we proposed, the signature of a profound and forgotten chapter of human history. We argued that the ancient myths of hell are the degraded, fragmented echoes of a real, sophisticated astronomical knowledge possessed by our distant ancestors, a knowledge of the true nature of the worlds orbiting other stars. We explored how this terrifying awareness, once lost to science and repurposed as religion, became the most powerful tool in human history, forging the authority of priesthoods, laying the cosmological foundations of empires, and shaping the very soul of our species with a fear rooted not in fantasy, but in a remembered cosmic reality. And so, here we are, at the end of our journey, left to contemplate its meaning. For all of our existence, We have looked to the stars and seen a reflection of ourselves. We populated the darkness with our heroes, our gods, our monsters, and our dreams. It was a one-way conversation. We spoke, and the silent cosmos listened. But our investigation suggests a more profound, more unsettling dialogue. What if the conversation was never one way? What if, in our deepest past, the cosmos spoke first? What if the awesome and terrifying reality of these worlds was impressed upon the minds of our ancestors? And we have spent the last 10,000 years trying to process that revelation through the limited languages of myth, art, and religion? Perhaps the story of humanity is not one of us inventing myths to explain the stars, but of the stars impressing their nature upon us. And our myths are the long drawn-out echo of that initial terrifying impact. This reframes our entire perception of knowledge. We are, in the 21st century, like digital archaeologists. We use our advanced technology, our space telescopes, our spectrographs to uncover the secrets of the universe, and we feel a sense of pride in our discoveries. But what if we are not the first to find these secrets? What if we are merely the first to rediscover them in the language of science? We are like explorers who have found a highly detailed blueprint for a complex machine, only to realize that an ancient culture possessed a cruder, but functionally identical, version of the same schematic, a version we had long dismissed as primitive religious art. It imparts a sense of deep humility. The universe has always been this strange, this creative, this terrifying. We are not the first to know it. We are simply the first in a long time to have the tools to prove it. The great book of human mythology and the great book of modern astronomy, which we have long believed to be telling entirely different stories, may in fact be two volumes of the same epic. One is written in the language of poetry and fear, the other in the language of mathematics and data. But they may be telling the same story, describing the same places. Our journey through this mystery has simply been an act of translation, and this translation changes everything. The next time you stand beneath the vast, silent tapestry of the night sky, remember what we have learned together. It is not an empty canvas. It is not a serene and peaceful backdrop. It is a library, and its shelves are filled with a billion worlds. And while some may be gentle Edens, others are the very hells our ancestors warned us about. They are real. The ruins of ancient temples are no longer just weathered stones. They are monuments to a civilization grappling with cosmic terror. The ancient myths are no longer just stories for children. They are the fossilized remains of a lost human science. We are the children of the stars, not just in the poetic sense that our atoms were forged in their hearts, but perhaps in a historical sense as well. Their light gave us life, but their terrifying realities may have given us our demons, our gods, and the very foundations of our civilization. The final truth is that our destiny has always been intertwined with the worlds that lie beyond our own. Our past is written there, and so is our future. Our inheritance is not etched in stone, but is written in the fiery light of a billion distant suns. The investigation for a species as curious and as haunted as our own never truly ends.